As someone who has been immersed in the book industry for quite some time, I often find that book industry professionals like myself will bandy around terms without really defining them. And that's why today I want to talk about a major term that I find the confusion around it can really prevent authors from getting what they need to finish their book. Today I want to talk about what a book coach actually does. Stay tuned.
You've been writing your memoir, maybe even for years. You know your material, you know what it means. What's missing isn't the story, it's the structure. And that's why we started the Memoir Method Book Club. Every single month, Emily Thrash, a professional writer and editor, teaches you how to read like a writer by breaking down a published memoir and showing you what it's doing under the surface. Your first session is free. Head over to pageandpodium.com/book club to sign up.
Over the years that I have been recording this podcast, I bet that I have talked about the term book coaching and or our group program many times. And very often I realize that I don't take the time to really define what I mean and explain what not only these terms mean, but also what the people behind them will do for you. And this is a real tragedy because actually book coaches can be the secret weapon in your pocket. But I find it's really difficult to know whether you need a book coach if you really aren't sure what you're going to be getting out of the process. So I thought today that we would take a deep dive into what I see book coaches doing, both within Page and Podium and outside in the folks that I interact with who are also in the book industry outside of our immediate company. So just to be really kind of quick about what we do offer as you're listening, we offer one-on-one coaching. We call this the Editor in Your Pocket program. It includes both weekly coaching and also editing on your manuscript. We have our group program that is for women only, the Memoir Method. That includes everything that I'm going to be talking about today. It is effectively book coaching in a group. And we also offer for more advanced authors, Voxer coaching. Voxer is a walkie-talkie app, a voice messaging app, effectively. And for those who are experienced authors, but just need kind of a little, like a shoulder to lean on, somebody to ask their questions of, somebody to check in with, we do offer Voxer coaching as well at a little bit lower price, kind of for people that want to continue having some support, even after they've really got most of the writing stuff down. Okay, so to get into it, there really are 5 major things that a book coach is going to do for you, both within Page and Podium's offerings and also from others that I have spoken with, trained over the years in their own companies. Okay, so let's dive into it. The first thing that I want to do is really give you kind of a preview of what a book coaching session would be in our one-on-one program, because I think this is going to give you a lot of context. Now, normally what we will do with a one-on-one client who has not started their book, or often they've kind of started their book, but they've started, stopped. Usually with this type of client, we will want to start by developing the outline. So oftentimes they'll have a little bit of an outline, but they don't feel really secure about it. So what your book coach will do in this case is give you training materials that will help you kind of think through what we're trying to do. And then as you're working through the process of development, which we have laid out step by step at Page and Podium with worksheets and video trainings, with your one-on-one coach, you'll be going through that process. In our group program, you would just be working through that on your own at your own pace with kind of regular check-ins with us. So with your one-on-one coach, you would be developing out your outline, developing out your book, your message, your topic. From that point, we really start to get into a rhythm. And this is something we call at Page and Podium the chapter train. And basically all we mean by that is once you get going, once you get your chapter writing kind of routine down, it can feel like the momentum starts to carry you. The challenge is really getting there. So the way that we have found that is the best way to set up the momentum for our coaching clients is that most of the sessions that happen within that chapter train period will kind of have 2 different components. In the first component, you would be going over the previous submission that you had sent in. With our Editor in Your Pocket program, on Monday, you will submit up to 10 pages of your writing. That will be all marked up for you and delivered before your session, which is usually going to be Wednesday or Thursday. So we'll use the first half of the session, maybe not even half, but the first part of the session, to go through the comments that the book coach has left on your manuscript. That way, anything that's kind of a recurring problem, something that might be going to come up for you in the next chapters, you can really get clarity on that. Now, I see this kind of show up in all types of ways, but I wanted to give a really specific example. And that is a client that I'm personally working with as his book coach right now. Now, he is writing this beautiful, beautiful book of essays. It's kind of inspired by advice that he wanted to share with his sons, but it's kind of advice that he would give to his younger self too. And what we have been working on really is the structure of those essays. Whenever you're thinking about writing a book of essays, it is so important that each of your essays is structured in a way that is really, really sound. So that's really where our focus has been. And as I have gone through week after week, gone through each of those chapters, I've really been able to kind of spot the places where he's kind of continually getting tripped up. And the way this shows up often is that we'll spend, as I said, the first part of the session going through my feedback, often with a focus on structure because that is really where he wanted and needed support. But then in the second half of the session, he will typically bring in an outline for the next chapter, which then we can go over together and really make sure that he is set to write. The real benefit of getting in this chapter trained space is that I know him very, very well. I can typically look at his chapter outline and tell him where things are going to fall apart, where he's going to struggle, and most importantly, where I think he could benefit from a little bit more thought, a little bit more structure, a little bit more intention before he actually starts writing. Now, the reason I wanted to share this specific client example is not only is this book going to be so good, and I cannot wait to share it with you, but also because he said something to me the other day that so clearly demonstrated the value of working with a book coach to me. And what he said was, after I have been working with you, I realized that I didn't ever have writer's block. I just didn't know what I wanted to say. And oh, y'all, this was music to my soul, because that's true. Most of the time when we have writer's block, it's that we don't really know what we want to say. And when you're working with a book coach, you are not only getting the benefit of someone looking at what you've already done, you are also getting the benefit of someone who has done this many, many times, looking out for you in advance so that you make sure you are not trying to write that chapter and realizing you don't know what you want to say. Instead, you are being set up to step by step by step by step go through the next chapter, get those ideas down in a way that not only feels good to you, but also that's going to feel really good to your reader. So from there, we just do that week after week after week. Of course, some chapters need different things. Sometimes we need to do a little bit more discussion about the particular point that you want to make. Are there kind of nuances that you want to think about? Are there ideas that you're not quite sure how you want to articulate? Do you have ideas for a different kind of structure in the chapter that you want to play with? All of these things are things that I have discussed with this client and lots of other clients too. So you really do have the benefit of someone who knows how this is likely to go for you as the writer that you are. So whether you are a beginner, very advanced, or like most of us, somewhere in the middle, you are getting the benefit of that book coach being able to kind of see where you're likely to have trouble and help pull you back from that. Okay, so with that kind of general structure in mind, I want to go through, to my mind, the 5 biggest benefits of working with a book coach, because I find that some of these are things that people really overlook that could be really, really beneficial to them. Okay, so the first thing, this is not something people overlook. This is usually what people want when they're seeking out a book coach. That's accountability. Most people realize that without some kind of external motivation, it can be really, really difficult to stay on track with the schedule that you've set for yourself. So one thing that a book coach can do is really set up a system of accountability. Now, I've seen this in a couple of different ways, both with our one-on-one and with our group book coaching offer. With our one-on-one, this is really clearly baked in. Each Monday at the end of the day, you, the client, are responsible for submitting 3,000 words, or again, around 10 double-spaced pages. And we notice if you don't submit it. So what I find is that most people will submit something. This is such a clear holdover from our days in education. And in fact, the client I was just talking about said to me the other day, I really want to make my teacher proud. And then he said, I'm the teacher, right? So this is something that we really can leverage to our advantage, especially if you were somebody who it was really important to you during your school years to really make sure that you were kind of doing what was expected, doing what was going to get some praise, really wanting to show, I think, that you are invested. I think what we really want to show with that kind of thing, we want to show we're invested. We want to show we're trying and doing our best. And we want to show that we're learning and growing. So oftentimes that sort of deadline of having to have those 10 pages in can be the accountability that we need, especially if we're somebody that it's really important to us that we follow through on what's asked of us. So that's one way that accountability can happen. But I also want to be really clear that there really isn't any kind of necessity that you submit your work for accountability to work. And the way I know that is from our group book coaching program, the Memoir Method. Now, I've talked a bit about this program on this channel before, and if you want to read more, you can find that at pageandpodium.com/memoir-method. And the thing I want to point out here is that even though in our group book coaching program, we don't include one-on-one editing, you can certainly add this as an add-on or an upgrade, but we don't include that. And what I find is that actually most people in the group book coaching program don't really need to submit things to feel the accountability. Instead, knowing that they are going on this weekly group call, that everybody in the group is going to be on this call Tuesdays at noon Central, is enough for them to want to make some progress. The reason is, on those calls, we typically ask everybody to give us an update. And of course, nobody wants to have to say, like, you know what, I actually didn't work on it at all. And usually, even if that's the case, we can talk through with you why that was the case. Was it the case that you needed a week off to kind of give your brain a rest, process some ideas? Or was it the case that something external is holding you back and we can kind of help brainstorm, figure out how to get through that? But either way, having to just give the update is very often accountability enough. Now, the caveat here, just as I said, my former client said, I want to make my teacher proud, accountability is going to have to come from someone that you really don't want to disappoint. And this is the reason that very often when we try to have friends or partners do this accountability piece for us, it kind of falls flat. You really have to believe that this person is expecting to get that accountability report. They are expecting you to make progress, and they're going to hold you to it if you don't. That's the value of a book coach. I think all of us know that anytime we try to bring a friend or relative in, they're going to help to the capacity they can help. But when we bring a professional in, it's their job. It is their job to hold you accountable. And in fact, I would say this is the most common thing that brings people into all of our coaching offerings, is just wanting that little bit of accountability. Okay, the second thing, and I know that this will resonate with so many of y'all that enjoy this channel, is training and education. When you are working with a book coach, it actually does matter very much that this is not just someone you paid to hold you accountable. Because when you are writing a book, the number of things that can stump you grows exponentially the longer you work on the book. Unfortunately, writing a book is just like almost every other type of expertise, meaning that when you first start, you will feel much, much more confident about your abilities to do the work than you will when you get about halfway through. This is just the nature of the beast. In the beginning, we don't know what we don't know, but as we move through, we start to realize that, there is a lot of stuff we don't know. And the real benefit of a trained expert book coach is that not only are you getting that accountability, you are also getting actual answers to your questions. Now, this can show up in lots of different ways. I already mentioned that when we're working with one-on-one clients, you are getting very, very personalized feedback. Your book coach will be working with you week after week. They will be able to pretty clearly see where you are strongest, where you really don't need help, and where you really are kind of struggling. So the client that I mentioned, my book coaching client I mentioned earlier, I think he's a great example of this. On the line level, in terms of writing a really beautiful sentence, thinking of really strong ideas, he doesn't need that much help. We do talk a lot about ideas just to kind of nuance and develop them, and because it feels really good to have that time to just sit and really talk about your ideas, hear how they're received by somebody else. So we do that. But as I said earlier, really where he needed the support was the chapter level structure. Well, that's where we're going to focus, right? And the more I work with him, the more I can see, okay, you've got this piece of structuring down, but here, this is kind of tripping you up. How can we approach this? That is actual targeted guidance for the actual targeted things you need help with. And that is the value of a book coach. Now, we present this a little bit differently in our group coaching program, the Memoir Method, in that with the group program, we obviously can't be giving each person in the group a specific kind of training module during that group call. We want to leave the group call to be the most effective for the most people. And that typically means we need to keep things just like a little bit kind of higher level, right? We're not going into all of kind of the step-by-step how-to stuff. We really want to do more of the troubleshooting, more of the kind of getting to the heart of what's going on. So in that program, we model something that's called a flipped classroom. If you're from education, both Emily and I have background in education, so we run many of the things in the group program the same way we really would a flipped classroom. And all a flipped classroom means is that the actual instruction, the how-to, that happens on your own time. But then when you come into the classroom, rather than spending time with me telling you how to do something, we're going to spend that time really digging in to where you need help, where you got tripped up. Because very often, the how-to is much more generic. The how-to is advice we can give to most people. It's the where we get tripped up, where all of our individual personalities, strengths, weaknesses, bugaboos come in to throw us off our game. So in a flipped classroom, the students learn the material on their own and then come in to really practice it and hone it and really get it into their bones. The same is true in our group coaching program. So I've teased a little bit before on this channel, but part of that program, the part that I truly am the most proud of, is that even though memoir is such a creative task, it's your personal expression, it's your story, there is no cookie cutter for how you're going to tell the story. Simply isn't. We have found a way through trial and error, through, again, Emily and my training, both in writing and teaching, we have found a way to present the information that you need in a step-by-step way. So everyone that starts in our group program starts with the development module. And the development module takes you through the 7 steps that you need to create a really strong, solid outline and writing plan. Step by step. It's not easy because writing a book isn't easy, but it is going to make the process very, very transparent and clear for you. And what that means is that all of our Memoir Method group members are able to access all of the training and education materials anytime they want to on demand. And they also have one-on-one support to bring in the problems that they're having, the very specific things that they need help addressing. So, regardless of how you are getting this training, one real benefit of a book coach is that not only do we have the training on how to write a book, we know how to do it. We've done it many, many, many times. Book coaches also are used to working with authors and very often used to working with first-time authors. And what that means is, just like any skilled university professor, we are able to see where you're struggling and identify the places that you need support. That's our job. So in fact, with this training education, I will just mention one of our previous group members who has now graduated. She's an alum of the program. She really likened the group program to a graduate level course. So you can see that testimonial. It's on that Memoir Method webpage, pageandpodium.com/memoir-method. But one thing she pointed out is that we are going really in depth. This is not fluffy. It's not surface level. Rather, we are just presenting it as a flipped classroom so that you have the time to really process and digest that information and then get targeted support later. So you should be asking your book coach to give you this kind of training and expertise. That is such a value add that you do not have to figure it out all on your own from trial and error. You can benefit from our trial and error as authors ourselves, and from our other clients' trial and error. It's so, so, so valuable. Okay, the third thing that you are going to get from working with a book coach is community. Now, of course, this is going to look different depending on the type of coaching that you are getting. But I will say, even when you're working with a one-on-one coach, it's maybe not community in the sort of broadest definition, but just having another person that knows what you're doing, knows what your book is about, knows why it matters to you and how much it matters to you, that is so, so beneficial. And I will tell you, even my clients that I have worked with on Boxer, this asynchronous, we're kind of sending messages back and forth, I'm usually in that case not seeing their writing at all. And in fact, I had a recent Boxer client that was working on several different pieces. She has a kind of a research writing pipeline, several different pieces that she was working on. And I know a little bit about all of them. But what was so important was that she had someone to say, you know what, I had mentioned XYZ piece. Here's how it's going. I've got all this stuff going on. It becomes very, very intimate and personal. You do have someone that is totally in your corner. And while, yes, with a one-on-one coach, that probably is only one person, just having that one person, it can make such a world of difference. But of course, if community is the thing that is the most important to you, something like a group book coaching program is so ideal because you are literally in a made-to-order community. You are literally in a group with people who are doing the exact same thing that you are. And one of the benefits that I do find gets overlooked is that when you are thinking about a group book coaching program, one of the benefits is you not only are going through the program with other people that are doing the same thing as you, you're also going through the program with people that already did that. You're also going through the program with people who have already done the thing you're working on. And that is so valuable. I have seen so many times how reassuring it can be for someone to bring in an issue. We talk about it, we pick it apart. Where are you struggling? And then some person who is more advanced will hop in with the most encouraging, supportive comment about how they had the same problem. And you can just feel the vibe shift when that happens. Just having someone see you like that, see your struggle like that, and someone prove to you that you can get through it because they did, that is so valuable. And that is why community really, it is so, so, so important. So we have that in our group calls. That's kind of what I was just describing. The Memoir Method also does have an app-based communication mechanism that's a lifetime access. So in that app, there also are people that are popping in that have written their book some time ago. So you really do have a lot of access to a lot of different people with different experiences, strengths, weaknesses, etc. Okay, the fourth thing that you are going to get from a book coach is the opportunity to really workshop and figure out what you want to say. In other words, you are going to get clarity. Now, let me again kind of give you what this looks like in action because I think it's really, really useful. Now, I want to take you to a different client, and this client is someone who is writing a more of a how-to, kind of a leadership book. Now, when she came to me, she had been teaching and training on the topics that she's writing about for some time, so she really does know her stuff. But what she had was maybe 3 or 4, maybe 5 kind of trainings that she did as standard trainings. Of course, those had evolved over time. She also had different kinds of guest blog posts and articles that she'd placed different places. She had also podcast interviews she'd done public speaking, keynote speaking, all the things. So she had a lot of ideas. One of the things that is always going to be a struggle when you have a lot of ideas, she really struggled to figure out how they all fit together. She really struggled to figure out what is my book actually about, because it can't just be a laundry list of ideas, right? We want some cohesive thesis to your book. Well, one thing that she and I spent a lot of time doing, especially in the beginning, was honestly just talking through what she wanted to say. So this is a particular kind of skill of mine. I think it comes from being a social scientist, talking with a lot of people, really pulling ideas out of them. But all of the book coaches on our staff are also very good at this, and really any book coach you're going to work with should be able to do this for you too. And that is asking the right questions to keep you talking. One of the things about coaching any type of coaching, is it is really at its best when the coach is listening and you are talking. Oftentimes, I know it seems like this can't be useful. Why don't you just talk on your own? And maybe that's helpful. But the distinction that comes in when you're working with a professional book coach is that we are able to think about your ideas and your book at the same time. And I find that people who have not written a book before often have to move between. They can think about what the book is, they can think about what their ideas are, but figuring out how that comes together in something that makes any kind of sense, that you can hold in your head, that you can use as a plan, well, that's another story. So one thing a book coach can do is really prompt you for ideas, really ask clarifying questions, really ask you to explain, in other words, what are you getting at here? Really ask you what kinds of connections you can make. How is X concept related to Y? And in answering those questions, in explaining these things, often to someone that doesn't know much about you or your field, you will find so much clarity. Just having someone else who is not, as a favor to you, real quick reading your stuff and giving you a couple ideas, but rather someone who is so deeply invested in being with you and your ideas, and really helping you to kind of cook those up and curate them in a way that serves your book. It's worth its weight in gold. And this happens in our group program too, albeit in a slightly different way. Very, very often when we have folks going through that step-by-step that I described as the kind of first module of the Memoir Method, one of the things that they're doing during that time is figuring out very specifically what their topic and message should be. I have videos on both of those things. You can kind of look back. I talk about that all the time on this channel and podcast. But suffice it to say, even though I talk pretty regularly about what a memoir message should be, that doesn't make it easy to solidify what your memoir message will be. So what we often encourage is that when folks are at that developmental point where they are kind of going through figuring out what their message is, figuring out what the topic is, how those are the same and different, what they're even trying to do, we ask them to share how they're thinking about it in the group. Now, we do this in a very, very structured way because both of us have come through group critique types of sessions, and both of us know that group critiques can go off the rails really, really quickly. So in our particular group book coaching program, we really want to structure this. So Emily and I are on almost every call together. It's always one or the other, but usually we're both on. And we will work with the author first to really kind of shape, to ask the questions that, again, we know will be valuable because we've been doing this a long time. But then what you find is that as those ideas start to crystallize, as they start to feel really, really good, you can feel that they're good from the other people in that room. There's a vibe that just starts to happen when things click into place. It's so, so valuable. So when you are in these places where you can really talk freely about what you want to say, what you think, where you are, we very often can get huge, huge benefits out of just a little bit of workshopping. And that's what you get in the group program. So when you are thinking about a book coach, it is super, super important that you have that clarity, that you have that opportunity to really talk through ideas and figure out how you want to say the thing you want to say. And the last thing that you will get out of a book coach, number 5, is you will get a sense of encouragement and support. Now, I save this for last because one thing I know about the high achieving women that I typically draw to this channel is we really don't think that we should need to have cheerleaders. Well, I get it, friends. I don't really think I should need to have a cheerleader either. But I'll tell you what, on the days when I am feeling so bad about myself, on the days when I don't know what the point of any of this is, it is so valuable to me to have my business coach be able to pull me out of that and say, listen, here is realistically where you are. I know it feels terrible, but realistically, let's look at this strength and this strength and this strength. Let's look at how far you've come from X point to Y point. Let's really get an actual objective sense of how you're doing. And when she does that, I always feel so much better. Now, of course, sometimes I want to wallow in it. That's okay. But there is something so valuable about having someone whose entire job is not just to know who you are, but to know who you are as an author. And that is your book coach's job, to know where you are going to falter, where that mindset is going to start to slip, where your real strengths and weaknesses are, and to show how far you've come. And I want to give you an example from just this morning. Now, I am working with a wonderful, wonderful book coaching client. She has written books before, actually, but this particular book she's working on really had her held up. She started maybe 15 years ago on this book, pulled it back out during COVID, put it back away, and she has a book contract. So at the point that she came to me, she said, "Help, I am stuck and I have to get this into my editor in 3 months." Now, luckily, most of the book was actually either drafted or pretty thoroughly outlined, but I'll tell you, we are going to hit her deadline. We are going to have that book sent off by the deadline that she owes it to her editor. And just this morning, I was just kind of helping her celebrate with that. I think that is such a major accomplishment. And I can tell you, she didn't think she would get there. In fact, when she finished that draft, when the whole draft was done, it's just revisions now, but when the whole draft was done, she didn't even realize that she had finished that draft. Truly. I said to her in a session, "Do you realize that your draft is done?" And she started to cry. Because no, she didn't. She didn't. She hadn't even thought of it. She was way too busy being hard on herself. And if that isn't the most relatable thing, I don't know what is. But what happened is that as we had this conversation, she started to realize that she's doing it. She's doing this thing that she really, part of her thought she would not be able to do. Part of her thought it would never come together. She'd have to just give up. Part of her thought that. And I'll tell you, when you are in that place, there is nothing more valuable than someone who can really take a step back and really help you see yourself for how you truly are. Truly. This is not blowing smoke. It's not being a yes person. You know, I do not agree with any of that. Rather, what it is helping you realistically see how much you've grown in a craft where you will always be growing. Put another way, when we write, we are continually refining our craft. Very, very often, you will look back at the work you have done before, and you will not be able to realistically and objectively see how far you've come. You won't. Having someone that can pull you back is so valuable, and that is something that your book coach should do for you. We do this in all of our offerings, actually, including our ghostwriting offerings, because it's so important. As someone who is developing these ideas, messages that you want out there, it's so important that you can see the way you're growing. It is so important that you can see the ways these different threads that maybe once didn't fit together are actually starting to form a pretty amazing tapestry. And oftentimes I find authors can't do that for ourselves. We just can't. We need an outside person. So that's what a book coach can do for you. Okay, well, I hope that this has been useful. If you are somebody that's been kind of on the fence, know that we start all of our program offerings with an individual call. You will be on a call with me. I want to hear explicitly how you're doing, where you're struggling, what's working really well, what you're excited about, what you're kind of dreading. I want to get to know you and your book before we ever sign on. So there really is no kind of expected commitment. If you're kind of on the fence, if you think book coaching might be good for you, you think you might be ready to move forward, but you want to make super, super sure that it's really going to be beneficial, go ahead and book that call. You can head over to pageandpodium.com/contact. You'll see that you can go ahead and book a call right there with me. But before you do, I'm going to ask you some questions because I want to know you. That is the entire purpose of a book coach, is that we are there with you. We know you, we know your book. And of course, before I sell you any kind of a program, I also really want to know that that program is going to help you. I am not in the business of trying to get people enrolled in stuff that's not going to work for them. I'm in the business of making sure that authors are successful. So if you think book coaching could be useful, either the group or the one-on-one, or if you're a little more advanced, maybe you want the boxer, please reach out. I would love to chat with you. So head over pageandpodium.com/contact. Until then, thank you so much for watching this channel. I just want to give you a quick reminder to like, share, rate, review, subscribe. It really does help more people find us. Particularly if you are listening on a podcast app, I would love to encourage you to leave us a review. Just helps boost us a little bit in the algorithm. And we're all working with the algorithm these days. Okay, so as you move forward, I hope that your book writing is everything that you wanted it to be. If it's not, reach out. Let's get you going. And in the meantime, happy writing.
You know that feeling when a book just hits you? Not because the story is wild, but because it's shaped so intentionally that it almost makes you rethink your own story. You finish that last page and think, how did they do that? The structure, the honesty, the clarity. There's something under the surface that you just can't put your finger on. And the reason is, unless someone shows you how memoirs actually work, it's hard to translate that inspiration into your own writing. And that's exactly why we created the Memoir Method Monthly Book Club. If you want to join Emily Thrash every single month to dig into an exemplary memoir and figure out what's happening under the surface, head over to pageandpodium.com/book club. Your first month is free, and we can't wait to welcome you to the group.